Hey, there's movies in theaters again. I'm John Maher, and that's Abby Brooks, and that's Aaron Brooks. This is Why We Love Horror 3.0, episode 78. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Doing great. I'm just thrilled to be back in the theaters, and particularly thrilled to be talking about a batshit movie. And I will use that not lightly here.
It's definitely batshit. It's a Shudder original that dropped in theaters. I mean, I hadn't heard much about this up until like maybe a few days beforehand when I saw it, like it was dropping in theaters. And then they told me John Lithgow was in it. Why wouldn't you watch it? It's The Rule of Jenny Penn.
Ain't it strange? In this place of all places, here I am, full alive. We all get what's coming to us at the end. You're not allowed to do this! Who rules? Jenny Penn.
Who rules? is like probably the most haunting thing. Everything John Lithgow does. I don't know if it's Trinity Killer level John Lithgow, but it's close. What are your guys' first impressions of The Rule of Jenny Penn?
My first impressions, well, like you, I didn't really know what to think going into this movie. And just watching this, I mean, it's a good movie. It's a lot. And I think that the performances are really great. I think that's the main takeaway of this movie is that the performances are awesome, especially by John Lithgow. Jeffrey Rush was really good too. I think some of the story stuff is probably on the lesser side for this movie, below the performances, but it is ultimately a good movie that's worth seeing.
Yeah. I didn't know anything really about this movie except John Lithgow. And then Jeffrey Rush came up once I looked up this movie. So that was cool. Yeah, the performances are incredible in this movie. I think not just by Lithgow and Rush, but I feel like everybody in the old person home, I felt like it was a Ringer situation where we might have had some elder exploitation going on, and John Lithgow and Jeffrey Rush playing it up around some actually impaired people. But these are apparently actual actors. But that, I mean, is a compliment. Leaving the movie, I mean, I was pretty blown away by what I just saw. There was multiple times we were able to exclaim out loud in the theater because it was just us who went to see it on Thursday night, and that's
you got to yell at the screen. It was great.
Yeah, I was mostly yelling. I'll be honest. Yes, that's true. Yeah, it was also just overall, I feel like Tone's a really interesting line where it's never making fun of the subject it's talking about. It actually is very respectful, and a rare movie that actually focuses on this particular age group in this sort of setting, which is a nursing home, basically. So in New Zealand.
Yeah, and I gotta say, before I give you a synopsis, Lithgow's New Zealand accent is great.
Yes,
he does a great job,
and it dips out on purpose. I'm going to tell myself.
Yeah. The synopsis is basically Jeffrey Rush plays Stefan. He is an aging judge, hardline judge, really hates pedophiles. And in the middle of sentencing a pedophile, he starts going off on the mother of the kids, and he has a stroke. And the stroke is severe enough that it winds him up in a nursing home. But that nursing home is leave it up to the interpretation of the audience whether or not this gentleman, Dave Creeley, who was an employee there and then now is committed there, is really torturing the other patients. And that's the rule of Jenny Penn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What were your impressions? Like, I'm going to toss up spoilers because I don't think we can talk about it. I don't think we can talk about like really deep stuff without spoiling it. What was your guys' take? Did you think, I mean, obviously he suffers a stroke. We see the scene where Jeffrey Rush's character is administered like the competency tests. He fails them all. So we know he has dementia or Alzheimer's, some sort of cognitive decline.
Yeah.
What's your takeaway? Is he hallucinating or is John Lithgow's character really like a psychopath?
I don't fully know. And that's, I think, what the movie really is like trying to get at. By the time we got to the end, I was kind of like, okay, I don't know. It felt like there was they wanted you to think that there was more going on, like even like a supernatural maybe kind of element, but I don't think so. So I'm still not 100% sure on the interpretation of this movie, if it was just him kind of, losing it and getting further into his disease towards the end of the movie, or if John Lithgow, if it was just straightforward and it was a crazy guy in a nursing home going after everybody.
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't really trust anything coming from Jeffrey Rush from the jump, because after the incident in the courtroom, because like there's even like flashes on the screen like very, very quickly, like of him with he's like kind of coming in and out of like the days there, for a lack of a better term. I think that we're set up from the beginning to have an unreliable narrator. And it allows for this much to really happen anyways. I just think I don't think it's really happening. I don't.
I'm going to fall on the opposite side only because Stefan has a roommate, Tony, who apparently was like a New Zealand rugby player back in the day. And now he's like arthritic and suffering, but he's like a legend. And if Stefan is hallucinating, Tony is also hallucinating because he seems to because Tony is the one he sees getting tortured every night by Mr. Creeley. So, and let's get into that. So obviously we know I believe that, but
yeah,
Dave Creeley visits their room regularly with a puppet.
Yes.
And it is a baby puppet.
Yeah.
And we learn throughout some kind of like exposition that there's a therapy in that nursing home where people with Alzheimer's are given puppets. So he has a puppet. But this puppet's name is Jenny Penn, and Jenny Penn has a theme song, and he makes Tony, at least, lick the puppet's asshole several times in the movie. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that the whole bedroom scenes were, again, a spot where I feel like a different director than James Ashcroft would choose to start laughing at it and break the tension a little bit. You're laughing because it's maybe a nervous laugh a little bit. You're not like ha ha ha, like it. At least I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's being played that way at all within the movie. It's like pretty traumatic what's happening to this fella every night, and then it does happen also today. So like, yeah, that was like not surprising to me seeing this director's previous movie. Like, not surprising he kind of go there. It's just kind of how he likes to, I think, play things so far, but which is fine. But it added some real like tension, and you're like just rooting for this guy, and you think he's just, at least I thought he was just heading to the dementia ward. Like he's just getting closer and closer to the dementia ward. To me, that's where I saw this movie going.
And the only other piece I'll say is like other residents of the nursing home there's not a ton of them, but enough of them are meeting with accidents. One guy sets himself on fire. You saw that in the trailer because he spills alcohol over himself and then lights a cigarette. Maybe that's a legitimate accident. Maybe Stefan hallucinates it. But we do see Dave let the one lady with dementia out into the swamp, and she dies in the swamp. So that, I think, really happens.
Yeah, I think there might, now that we're talking about it, maybe it's like a mix between the two, honestly, because even throughout the entire movie, like the man who was on fire in the beginning, I kept saying, I'm like, when are they going to reveal that that was all fake? Like that was all like a hallucination, because I don't think that actually happened. And the thing with the woman being let out, I mean, you kind of see the aftermath of it for like a second, and then they just kind of breeze past it. But like you see the ambulance show up, you see them like looking out the window at the aftermath of it. Again, they don't dwell on it, but I think there's like a mix of different things where it's like, okay, I think Jeffrey Rush is progressing in his disease and seeing things that aren't happening, but also John Lithgow is also torturing these old folks.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
And I think the final piece of the puzzle that kind of ties it all together is this is like a kind of horror you don't see too often. It's like the misery of end of life, where like, yeah, these horrible things are happening to these people and they're living in horrible conditions, but nobody around them who's paid to care for them really seems to give a shit. And that's its own kind of horror.
There's no staff at this nursing home either to take care of these people. I feel like anytime anything was happening, there was no staff to see what was happening, or they just didn't care enough about what was going on.
Yeah, there's scenes where like there's like 20 people in the room, like the whole scene, like where like it's like the dance class or whatever.
That was my favorite scene in the movie.
He comes in and just starts stomping at everybody's feet, and they're all like, ow, ow. Like there's no staff there the entire time. Like somebody should be running that group, you think?
That would be a delusional hallucination, I think. I think that can explain a lot of the spots that if you're sticking to your side are holes, or our side, like there's holes if it's not a mixture of the two. And I refuse to believe that as a staunch defender of Rule of Jenny Penn, even if I can't remember the name of the movie for whatever reason. But yeah, no, the dance scene, I'm glad that got brought up. That's my favorite scene in the movie. That's a part that definitely was played for laughs, which again,
I think there's a lot of unintentional humor like that. I mean, that one I think might have been purposeful, but there's a lot of like unintentional, like weird humor.
I think it's like intentional, really black humor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's that, and then staff does show up sometimes. Whenever somebody needs a shower and they got to show John Lithgow's ass, staff is present. Staff is present for that. Yes. He doesn't. You get so much Lithgow ass. If you're a fan of that,
I am present. That man is 80 years old. Good for him.
And I'll say my favorite scene, even though it's horrifying, is when Jeffrey Rush, Stefan has gone into Dave's room and emptied all of his inhalers. And he has the asthma attack, and he's just like, and it goes on. The asthma attack goes on forever. If you have asthma, this movie will trigger you. Yeah, like you're gonna have a hard time because that scene's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just like once this movie's kind of crazy from the jump. Right after Jeffrey Rush's water is spilling out of his mouth, in that first, I'm just like, oh man, like I know it seems like a small point, but it really is just like this movie is going to make you uncomfortable at times. But it's purposefully like done, in my opinion. It's not just like, why is this happening? Like it's you're also following a character who's becoming more and more demented. So I feel like that can also explain some of like the disillusionment you have watching.
The giant baby head floating up.
Oh my God, that was I just think the entire everybody in this nursing home too is so convincing and so great as characters. I love the sunglasses character who had the date and time all the time. When he gets messed with, I was like, this is too far. This is too far. Not today. Not him. Anybody. And he also gets it. So not quite. It's not a movie where it just completely loses you with a body count. It's more the psychological aspects of this that I feel like were really surprising.
Yeah, we talked about very briefly, there's some very minor parallels to the front room, whereas we're in the front room, they just did gross shit and laid it out there. Right. The Rule of Jenny Penn does similar gross shit, but it's you're far enough away from it where you're you have to imagine how fucking gross it is.
Yeah. They don't more effective, and that's more
show you a pile of shit.
Yeah.
We'll go one more time around. Anything else we left out that you guys want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the bottom line for this movie is like you can definitely have a good time, but it is also like about very serious topics, about old folks in a nursing home. I think particularly the one character that really I felt the most bad for was the one that John Lithgow just let out into the swamp, because her whole thing is like she has dementia or something, and she's just waiting for her family to show up again for her again, and he's like, they're out there past that fence, and she just goes wandering out, and that's kind of the end of her. I thought that was a really one of the sadder moments, honestly. But yeah, I think there's a lot of like unintentionally or intentionally funny moments in this that you can have a good time with and see it for the performances too.
Yeah, nominate Lithgow and Rush, you cowards.
Yeah. I'd say the other saddest part, this time I'll wrap it up with this, is that Tony, the roommate who was the rugby player, like he decides to make a stand and try to stand up to Dave Curley, and he does like the most pathetic like haka dance, and he can't complete it because he's so like fucked up and arthritic.
Yeah.
But he's just like, and it's real sad. There's if old people like failing makes you sad, this movie is gonna break you.
No.
That is all this movie. It's just old people failing to do things over and over again. And it wraps up the actual climax, like where they're having a fight in the laundry room for like three like 80-year-old men to have a pretty hardcore, I would say.
Yeah,
not bad.
Yeah. Well, let's drop down these spoilers and we'll get on to some ratings here. We'll see what we all feel about this movie. I know what we all think, so I'll start. I think this is okay. Everything we said is great. I don't know why I rated it this. I think it's just it does kind of like float. I guess it coasts on its own merits. They could have done more. They didn't. I'm at a 3.5. I think it would go up if I rewatched it though. I'm at a 3.5 right now. Abby?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I this whole movie, I was waiting for there to be something more, or for there to be more of like an outright twist, and there wasn't. But I think on rewatch, looking back and trying to focus more on like little details, maybe that something more would come out of this movie for me. But I also gave it 3.5.
And Aaron?
And I looked at it as a great time. I had a tremendous time. I was also very sad and disturbed in this movie as well. So I love a movie that has the mixture of the two. I think it is a really strong like candidate to be in my top 10 for the year, to be honest with you. It's Lithgow is amazing. He really is. But Jeffrey Rush, like I really had to look up and make sure he was like healthy and well, because like he really plays a very convincing character as well. Like, and they both executive produced this really cool like passion project, but 4 videotapes for me. Yeah, and this is a solid 4. This is right behind Hard Eyes right now for me. So what a weird start to the year, but awesome. That's why I love horror.
Yeah, it's a slower start for the year, but it's not like they've all been bad. There's been some good ones mixed in there. So
yeah, definitely.
But on to other movies we watched this week for our own edification. It's the Why We Love Horror Challenge. You can go on over to this website, join us there, check out the prompt every week. We're on week 10, which is watch a movie from Europe, but I eliminated all the countries that like give us a ton of movies. Like couldn't do Spain or France or any English Isle country or Italy or any of Scandinavia. So that leaves you with other countries. And we ended on Aaron, so we'll start with Aaron. What movie did you pick?
So I went to Finland. It is a Shudder original from like 8 years ago, Lake Bottom or Bodom. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Bodom in Lake. This is a very, very solid camp slasher, basically, but it has some pretty interesting characters in it, and the amount of twists it has is like just very impressive, especially in the third act. So like it does like require like more attention than you realize, and it's also under 90 minutes. It's like 84 minutes long, so it's an easy watch. It's on Shudder, not talked about enough. and it's not the found footage Lake Bottom or Bodom, whichever it's known as, because there's also another movie by the same title that's found footage. It's not that one. So
I think I picked the right poster then, so that's good.
yeah, this is the correct poster.
Sweet. Abby, what'd you watch?
So I scoured Letterboxd to try and find a movie, and I found one called Night Siren. And I thought this movie was interesting. You can watch it on Tubi for free. I might not have been in like the fully like right headspace for a movie like this. It is a bit slower. It is a bit more ambiguous. Truthfully, I'm not sure if I like understand everything that I watched while watching it. But it's essentially, it's a story that you've kind of heard before. It's a girl who goes back to a town that she's familiar with from her past. There's witchcraft involved, and she's trying to get to the bottom of what happened in her past, kind of thing. And people are being accused of witchcraft. So if that sounds interesting, you'll probably like it.
All right. And I went to, again, like an abused partner, keep going back to Czechoslovakia to watch movies. And I watched Little Odik, also known as Otasonic, also known as Greedy Guts for some reason. There's an English title where it's called Greedy Guts. And it is a modern telling of a Czech folk tale about a family, a mother and father, or husband and wife. They're both infertile. They cannot have a child. So the father crafts a baby out of roots, as you can see, are holding him. And for some reason, the little guy comes to life. It's like Pinocchio gone wild, and it is it goes places. And if you're familiar with Czech horror movies, it goes to those places too. So check that out.
Oh boy.
Anyway, that'll do it for Why We Love Horror this week. Next week, there's another movie in theaters. We'll be back. We will watch Opus, and we will cover Opus next week. So that's going to be good. But if you made it this far in the video, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Go to the Facebook group at Why We Love Horror. I will throw up the Letterboxd challenge website one more time. Go there, join us there. We'd appreciate that. Schedule here's changed a little bit. Now on Sundays, since we're waiting for the new Dexter show to come out, my daughter has so graciously stepped up. You can watch the new hottest show on the channel, Why Liv Loves Horror. She'll be covering Monster House this weekend, I believe. She's going to watch that and tell us all about it. Monday is Versus. Thursday is Why We Love Horror. You're watching it. And every Friday, we're back to the old schedule. You're getting 2 episodes of Why We Love Horror trivia. So until next time, I'm John Maher, and that's the Brookses, Abby and Aaron. We'll see you next week on Why We Love Horror.